What would you do if a sudden life-or-death situation demanded everything from you and no one was watching? We are accustomed to tales of valor born in the crucible of uniformed conflict, of soldiers facing overwhelming odds, their courage emblazoned on the pages of history. But what of the quiet, unassuming individuals who, when confronted with the abyss, chose not to avert their gaze, but to step into the darkness, driven by an unwavering moral compass? We are about to introduce you to seemingly average individuals whose split-second decisions led to mind-boggling acts of courage. The twist: their stories will completely redefine your understanding of heroism, revealing that the greatest bravery often blooms unseen, in the most unexpected of places. For centuries, the chronicles of human conflict have largely focused on the grand narratives, the strategies of generals, the decisive battles, the political machinations of nations at war. Yet beneath this vast tapestry of history, countless individual threads of extraordinary courage, woven by civilians, often remain obscure, their brilliance hidden from public view. These are the unsung heroes, ordinary men and women who, without military training, without the sanction of authority, and often in profound isolation, made choices that defied the pervasive fear and moral decay of their times. Their arenas were not the sprawling battlefields, but the quiet corridors of homes, the perilous shadows of occupied cities, or the vast, unforgiving landscapes where refugees sought solace. Their heroism was not born of martial duty, but of a deeply ingrained human empathy, a spontaneous refusal to accept injustice, or a quiet determination to preserve life and dignity in the face of unimaginable threats. These acts often carried no promise of reward, only the looming specter of severe retribution if discovered. From sheltering the persecuted to resisting tyrannical regimes, from preserving cultural heritage to providing solace amidst catastrophe, civilian courage takes myriad forms, each a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. Their stories are a vital counterpoint to the dominant narratives of war, reminding us that even in the darkest hours, the light of human kindness and defiance can stubbornly refuse to be extinguished. One of the most remarkable and collective acts of civilian heroism unfolded in a small, isolated Protestant village high in the mountains of south-central France, a place called Le Chambon-sur-Lignon. As Europe descended into the cataclysm of World War II, France fell under Nazi occupation, and a collaborationist regime, Vichy France, was established. This government, eager to appease its German overlords, began to implement discriminatory laws against Jewish people, culminating in their systematic arrest and deportation to extermination camps. But in Le Chambon, a profound moral resistance took root, transforming an entire community into a sanctuary. Led by their pastor, André Trocmé, and his wife Magda, the villagers of Le Chambon made a collective decision to offer refuge to anyone fleeing persecution, particularly Jewish men, women, and children. This was not a pre-planned operation with military precision, but an organic, spontaneous response driven by deep religious conviction and an unwavering commitment to human decency. The Trocmés, themselves pacifists, preached a message of nonviolence and active compassion, urging their congregation to open their homes and hearts to the strangers at their gates. Word of Le Chambon's unique sanctuary spread through underground networks, reaching those desperately seeking an escape from the tightening Nazi noose. From 1940 to 1944, thousands of Jewish refugees, many of them children, found their way to this remote village. They arrived under cover of darkness, guided by resistance operatives, often exhausted, traumatized, and fearing for their lives. Each arrival was met not with suspicion, but with open arms and a quiet commitment to protection. The entire community participated in this extraordinary endeavor. Farmers offered food, often at great personal risk, knowing that sharing rations could draw unwanted attention. Teachers enrolled Jewish children in their schools, instructing them to adopt French names and stories for their pasts, meticulously protecting their true identities. Families took in strangers, sharing their meager resources, knowing that harboring Jews was a crime punishable by deportation or even death. The villagers devised a sophisticated yet informal system of communication and warning, allowing them to hide refugees whenever Vichy police or Gestapo units made unexpected appearances. When authorities would arrive for searches, the villagers employed subtle tactics of evasion. Children would be spirited away to nearby farms or forests, blending seamlessly into the rural landscape. Adults would be disguised as local farmhands or distant relatives. The villagers developed a remarkable code of silence, a collective agreement never to betray their secret, even under threat. This pervasive solidarity was the bedrock of their success, a testament to the power of a unified moral stand. The risks were ever present and terrifyingly real. Pastor Trocme himself was arrested multiple times, interrogated by the Gestapo, and spent time in internment camps. His cousin, Daniel Trocme, who ran a children's home in Le Chambon, was eventually captured and died in Majdanek concentration camp. Yet, despite these grave dangers and the constant psychological pressure, the villagers never wavered. Their resolve was fueled by a simple, profound belief that it was their moral imperative to save lives, regardless of the consequences. The ingenuity of the villagers extended beyond mere shelter. They established a network to facilitate escapes across the border into neutral Switzerland. Guides, often young men and women from the village, would lead small groups of refugees on perilous nighttime journeys through the rugged terrain of the massive Central, using secret paths and avoiding patrols. These were not trained operatives, but ordinary people who took on extraordinary burdens, their quiet determination propelling them forward through darkness and danger. Le Chambon-sur-Lignon stands as a unique historical anomaly, an entire community acting as a collective rescuer, without a formal organization, hierarchy, or explicit plan. Their heroism was not about grand gestures, but about daily, consistent acts of kindness and resistance. It was a heroism woven into the fabric of their everyday lives, a commitment so deeply ingrained that it became indistinguishable from their identity. When asked why they did it, the villagers often gave simple answers. It was natural, or it was the human thing to do. The collective courage of Le Chambon ultimately saved an estimated 3,000 to 5,000 Jewish refugees, many of them children, from certain death. It is a story not of a single hero, but of an entire community that chose empathy over apathy, defiance over complicity. Their actions shine as a powerful beacon, demonstrating that moral courage can flourish even in the most oppressive environments, transforming a small, forgotten village into a towering symbol of human resilience and compassion. From the collective heroism of Le Chambon, we turn our gaze to the singular, audacious courage of Irena Sendler, a Polish social worker who operated in the hellish confines of the Warsaw Ghetto. As Nazi Germany solidified its brutal occupation of Poland, it systematically isolated and starved the Jewish population of Warsaw, confining over 400,000 people to a squalid, walled-off district. Disease, starvation, and despair were rampant, but the true horror was yet to come: the systematic deportation and extermination of the ghetto's inhabitants. Irena Sendler, a Gentile, was a supervisor in the Warsaw Social Welfare Department. This position granted her a rare and dangerous privilege. She had passes that allowed her entry into the ghetto to monitor for typhus, a disease the Nazis feared might spread beyond the walls. What began as an effort to provide food and medical supplies quickly escalated into a daring and expansive rescue mission, fueled by Sendler's profound sense of moral outrage and an unflinching determination to save children. She understood, with chilling clarity, that the children within the ghetto were doomed. Their parents were dying, and even those who survived the initial horrors would eventually be sent to extermination camps. Sendler began to form a clandestine network known by its code name Zygota, or the Council to Aid Jews. This network comprised fellow social workers, orphanage directors, nuns, priests, and ordinary citizens, all united by a shared commitment to defiance. Sendler's method was simple in concept, but terrifyingly complex and perilous in execution. She and her network smuggled Jewish children out of the ghetto by any means necessary. Infants were drugged and placed in toolboxes, coffins, or sacks, then carried out by workmen. Older children were led through sewers and underground passages, or exited disguised as non-Jewish Poles, their appearances altered, their identities carefully fabricated. Some were even hidden under loads of bricks or in ambulances. Each rescue was a heart-stopping gamble. German patrols were vigilant, and detection meant instant execution for both rescuer and rescued. Sendler herself was constantly under surveillance. Yet, she persevered, driven by the faces of the dying children she encountered daily. She understood the immense psychological trauma inflicted on these children, many of whom had witnessed horrific violence and lost their families. She painstakingly placed each child with Polish families in orphanages or in convents, ensuring they received care and protection. A crucial, almost obsessive detail of Sendler's operation was her meticulous record-keeping. She knew that after the war, if any of these children were to be reunited with their families, their original identities would be vital. So, on scraps of paper, she wrote down the children's real names and their new adopted names, along with their hiding places. These fragile slips of paper were then placed in glass jars and buried beneath an apple tree in a neighbor's garden, a silent archive of humanity against oblivion. In October 1943, Sendler's luck ran out. The Gestapo, having received a tip-off, arrested her. She was subjected to brutal interrogations, her body enduring physical pain, but her spirit remained unbroken. She refused to betray her network or reveal the names and locations of the children she had saved. Miraculously, members of Zygota bribed a Gestapo officer to secure her release. Though severely injured, Sendler managed to escape, but she was forced to go into hiding, living under a false identity for the remainder of the war. Even while underground, Sendler continued her work, coordinating rescue efforts from the shadows. By the end of the war, Irena Sendler and her network had saved over 2,500 Jewish children from the Warsaw Ghetto, a staggering number that represents more children than were saved by any other single individual during the Holocaust. Her quiet, unrelenting bravery, her meticulous organization in the face of chaos, and her unwavering moral compass made her a beacon of hope in humanity's darkest hour. After the war, Sendler tried to locate the parents of the children she had saved, digging up her precious jars of names. Tragically, most of the parents had perished. The children she rescued lived on, often unaware of the full extent of the risks taken on their behalf. Sendler herself lived a quiet life, her story largely unknown for decades. It was not until the late 1990s that her incredible deeds began to receive international recognition, firmly cementing her place as one of the most profound unsung heroes of the 20th century. Her unwavering commitment to human dignity, even at the cost of her own life, provides a powerful testament to the extraordinary potential for courage within an ordinary individual. The narrative of civilian courage often intersects with the stories we already know, adding depth and a crucial human dimension. Such is the case with Miep Gies, a Dutch woman whose name is inextricably linked to one of the most poignant testaments of human suffering and resilience, Anne Frank's diary. In the harrowing years of World War II, as Nazi Germany tightened its grip on the Netherlands, the Jewish population faced systematic persecution, deportation, and extermination. Among those attempting to evade this fate was the Frank family, who, along with 4 others, went into hiding in a secret annex behind Otto Frank's business in Amsterdam. Miep Gies was a secretary in Otto Frank's company, Opekta. She was an ordinary woman, living a quiet life with her husband, Jan. But when Otto Frank approached her in the summer of 1942, revealing his desperate plan to go into hiding with his family and asking for her help, Miep did not hesitate. Her response was immediate, unequivocal, and deeply courageous. Of course. This simple affirmative launched her and several other non-Jewish employees into a perilous existence as protectors and providers for 8 individuals sequestered in a hidden attic. For 2 years, Miep Gies and her fellow helpers dedicated themselves to sustaining the inhabitants of the secret annex. Every day, they risked their lives to bring food, supplies, news from the outside world, and above all, a vital connection to humanity. Miep was responsible for purchasing groceries on the black market, navigating the shortages and exorbitant prices of wartime, always trying to get what the hidden families needed while avoiding suspicion. She would cycle around Amsterdam, her shopping bag filled with forbidden items, her heart pounding with the constant fear of discovery. Her work went beyond practical provisions. Miep brought books, magazines, and cheerful conversation, offering a precious balm to the increasingly isolated and anxious occupants of the annex. She shared fragments of news, often carefully filtered to spare them the full horrors unfolding outside, yet enough to keep them connected to the world they had lost. For Anne Frank in particular, Miep was a link to normalcy, a kind and supportive presence who encouraged her writing and brought her glimpses of hope. The psychological toll on Miep and her fellow helpers was immense. They lived with the daily burden of their secret, the constant fear of betrayal or accidental discovery, knowing that their own lives and the lives of those they protected hung by a thread. Every knock at the door, every unexpected visitor, every German patrol in the street sent shivers of terror through them. Yet they maintained their composure, their routines, and their unwavering commitment to their hidden friends. The precarious existence of the secret annex came to an abrupt and brutal end on August 4th, 1944. Acting on an anonymous tip, the Gestapo raided the building. Miep Gies and the other helpers were interrogated, but not arrested, though they fully expected to be. The hidden families, including Anne Frank, were discovered and subsequently deported to concentration camps, their hope extinguished. It was a devastating blow to Miep and her colleagues. In the chaotic aftermath of the raid, as the Gestapo officers ransacked the annex, Miep Gies saw something amidst the scattered papers on the floor. Anne Frank's diary. Knowing how important it had been to Anne, and without a moment's hesitation, Miep gathered the loose, handwritten pages and hid them, intending to return them to Anne upon her hoped-for return. She kept the diary safe in her desk drawer, unread for many months, a silent testament to a life interrupted. Tragically, Anne Frank did not survive the Holocaust. She died in Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in early 1945, just weeks before its liberation. When Otto Frank returned to Amsterdam, the sole survivor of the 8 people who had hidden in the annex, Miep Gies presented him with Anne's diary. It was a profound act of preservation, a final selfless gesture of friendship that ensured Anne's voice would not be silenced by the barbarity of war. Miep herself always downplayed her heroism, insisting she was not a hero, but simply did what was necessary. Her quiet, consistent courage, her deep empathy, and her unwavering loyalty made her an indispensable lifeline for the Frank family, and ultimately for the world, by safeguarding a story that continues to resonate across generations. In the annals of military history, the term hero is usually reserved for soldiers who perform acts of extraordinary bravery on the battlefield. But what if a soldier, driven by a profound moral imperative, deliberately enters the gates of hell not to fight, but to bear witness? This is the almost unbelievable story of Witold Pilecki, a Polish cavalry officer and resistance fighter whose act of courage went far beyond the conventional definitions of valor. His mission was to infiltrate Auschwitz, the notorious Nazi concentration and extermination camp, and report on its atrocities. In 1940, as reports of horrific brutality emerged from the newly established camp near Auschwitz, Pilecki, a veteran of the Polish-Soviet War, felt compelled to act. The world outside, and even the Polish resistance, struggled to comprehend the true nature of Auschwitz. Pilecki conceived an audacious plan. He would allow himself to be captured by the Germans during a roundup in Warsaw and be sent to Auschwitz as a prisoner. His objective was to gather intelligence, establish an underground resistance network within the camp, and ultimately organize an uprising. This was not a suicide mission. It was a mission into the heart of a living death. Pilecki, under the assumed name Tomasz Serafiński, deliberately walked into a German street sweep in September 1940, joining thousands of Poles being rounded up for forced labor and imprisonment. He was processed into Auschwitz I, the original part of the complex, and immediately confronted with an unimaginable reality. The camp was a systematic dehumanization machine, where starvation, disease, torture, and arbitrary executions were daily occurrences. Despite the omnipresent terror and the constant threat of death, Pilecki immediately began to establish his secret organization, which he called Związek Organizacji Wojskowej, ZOW, or the Union of Military Organizations. He shrewdly identified prisoners with leadership potential and recruited them, forming a network of cells across the camp. ZOW's objectives were multifaceted: to improve prisoner morale, distribute extra food and clothing, transmit intelligence to the outside world, and prepare for a potential camp revolt. Pilecki's courage was not a singular burst of adrenaline, but a sustained, agonizing ordeal of endurance. He witnessed unspeakable horrors: the systematic extermination of Jews, Poles, Roma, and Soviet prisoners of war, the sadistic experiments, the sheer scale of human suffering. Yet, he continued his work, meticulously collecting information on the camp's operations, the number of arrivals and deaths, the methods of extermination, and the identities of SS officers. This intelligence was incredibly dangerous to collect, and even more dangerous to transmit. ZOW members developed ingenious methods of smuggling out reports. Messages were hidden in dirty laundry, in packages intended for outside workers, or carried by prisoners who managed to escape. These detailed accounts, often written on tiny scraps of paper, reached the Polish resistance in Warsaw and were then relayed to the Western Allies. Pilecki's reports were among the first comprehensive accounts of the true nature of Auschwitz, particularly concerning the gas chambers and the mass extermination of Jews. However, the Allies, grappling with the scale of the war, often struggled to fully grasp or believe the magnitude of the atrocities described. Pilecki's desperate pleas for air raids on the camp or for Allied paratroopers to intervene went unheeded. The immense frustration of his situation, combined with the escalating brutality of the camp, fueled his determination to escape and personally deliver his message. After nearly 2.5 years of unimaginable suffering and clandestine operations within Auschwitz, Pilecki knew he could do more on the outside. On the night of April 26, 1943, he made his daring escape. Along with 2 other ZOW members, he overpowered a guard, cut the telephone line, and fled through the back gates of a bakery armed with stolen bread. They endured a harrowing journey, navigating through dense forests and evading German patrols, eventually reaching safety. Upon his escape, Pilecki immediately presented his findings to the Polish Home Army, providing crucial eyewitness testimony that corroborated and expanded upon his earlier reports. His Witold's report became one of the most important documents detailing the Holocaust from an eyewitness perspective. Despite his extraordinary courage and sacrifice, his story remained largely unknown in the West for many decades after the war. partly due to Cold War politics and his subsequent arrest and execution by the communist regime in Poland for his continued resistance activities. Witold Pilecki's voluntary infiltration of Auschwitz, his leadership of an underground resistance, and his harrowing escape exemplify a form of civilian courage that transcends even military bravery. He faced not an enemy on a battlefield, but a system of total annihilation, and he confronted it with intellectual tenacity, unwavering moral resolve, and profound physical courage. His story compels us to recognize that heroism can arise not only from fighting against an enemy, but from deliberately immersing oneself in the heart of darkness to reveal its unspeakable truths. While many acts of civilian courage during World War II involved individuals from occupied nations saving their countrymen or persecuted minorities, there were also foreign citizens who journeyed into danger, driven solely by humanitarian conviction. One such figure was Varian, an American journalist who, in the summer of 1940, arrived in Marseille, France, with $3,000 taped to his leg and a list of 200 prominent artists, writers, and intellectuals who desperately needed to escape Nazi-occupied Europe. His mission, under the auspices of the Emergency Rescue Committee, was to save lives. Marseille at that time was a perilous cauldron, the last port of call in Vichy France, teetering on the edge of Nazi control. It was a city teeming with refugees, spies, informers, and a pervasive atmosphere of fear and desperation. Thousands of anti-Nazi Germans, Austrian Jews, Eastern European intellectuals, and political dissidents who had fled their home countries found themselves trapped, their visas expiring, their lives in imminent danger of being handed over to the Gestapo. The Vichy government actively collaborated with the Nazis, making Frey's task incredibly dangerous and highly illegal. Frey, a seemingly unassuming intellectual, quickly established a sophisticated and daring underground operation. His initial list of 200 soon swelled to thousands, as news of his presence spread like wildfire through the refugee community. He set up an office, initially disguised as a relief agency, and began to recruit a small, diverse team of American expatriates, anti-Nazi Germans, and French resistors. This clandestine network embarked on a relentless mission to secure fake papers, arrange perilous border crossings, and facilitate sea voyages to safety. The methods employed by Frey's team were a masterclass in clandestine ingenuity. They forged travel documents, exit visas, and identity papers, painstakingly altering photographs and stamping official-looking seals. They established safe houses where refugees could hide before their escape. They cultivated contacts among corrupt officials, smugglers, and even members of the French police who sympathized with their cause. The sheer audacity of their operation, conducted right under the noses of the Vichy authorities and the ever-present threat of the Gestapo, was astounding. Frey's work was a constant tightrope walk between diplomacy and outright illegality. He initially tried to operate within the bounds of international law, appealing to American diplomatic channels for help. However, the official American policy, fearful of offending the Vichy government or being seen as interfering in European affairs, was largely unhelpful and often obstructive. Faced with bureaucratic indifference and outright obstruction, Frey realized he had no choice but to engage in illegal activities to save lives. He helped high-profile figures like artist Marc Chagall, political theorist Hannah Arendt, sculptor Jacques Lipchitz, and writer Franz Werfel escape. But his efforts extended far beyond the famous. He saved countless lesser-known individuals, providing a lifeline to anyone who sought his help. His empathy knew no bounds, and he often put his own life and freedom at extreme risk, refusing to abandon anyone under his protection. The constant pressure took a severe toll. Frey faced daily harassment from the Vichy police. His office was raided multiple times, and he was repeatedly arrested and briefly imprisoned. The American consulate, rather than supporting him, often actively worked to undermine his efforts, viewing him as a troublemaker who jeopardized their delicate relationship with Vichy. Despite this, Frye remained steadfast, his moral conviction overriding all personal danger and diplomatic pressure. In September 1941, after 13 months of relentless and perilous work, the Vichy government, under pressure from Berlin, finally ordered Frye's expulsion from France. He was branded persona non grata and forced to leave, his mission officially terminated. Yet, in that relatively short period, Varian Frye and his small, dedicated team had managed to save approximately 2,000 people from the Nazi terror, an extraordinary feat accomplished through sheer determination, resourcefulness, and unwavering courage. Frye returned to the United States a disillusioned man, frustrated by the lack of official support and the world's slow recognition of the impending Holocaust. He struggled to raise awareness, his urgent warnings largely unheard. His story, like many others of civilian courage, remained largely obscure for decades. It was not until many years later that the full magnitude of his achievements began to be recognized, earning him the posthumous title of Righteous Among the Nations from Yad Vashem, a recognition reserved for non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews during the Holocaust. Varian Frye's story is a powerful reminder that heroism can emerge from unexpected corners, driven by a profound sense of justice and an unyielding commitment to humanitarian ideals, even when governments falter. The tapestry of civilian courage extends far beyond the well-documented horrors of World War II, manifesting in diverse ways across different eras and conflicts. Consider the quiet defiance of the comfort women survivors and activists, women forced into sexual slavery by the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II. For decades, their stories were suppressed, ignored, or denied. Yet against immense societal pressure and personal trauma, a few brave women like Kim Hak-sun broke the silence in the early 1990s. Becoming the first to publicly testify about their experiences. Their courage was not in resisting their captors at the time, which was impossible, but in their later refusal to let their suffering be forgotten. These women, often elderly and frail, faced skepticism, shame, and even hostility. But their unwavering determination to seek justice, to bear witness, and to demand recognition of their history sparked a global movement. They stood before international bodies, shared their heart-wrenching testimonies, and became powerful advocates for human rights, insisting that their suffering, and that of countless others, be acknowledged and remembered. Their heroism lies in their resilience, their refusal to be silenced, and their profound commitment to ensuring that such atrocities are never repeated, transforming personal trauma into a universal call for justice and peace. Their fight for historical truth continues to this day, an enduring testament to the power of a civilian voice challenging official denial. Another profound example of civilian courage emerged from the Bosnian War in the 1990s, specifically in the besieged city of Sarajevo. For over 3 years, from 1992 to 1996, the city endured the longest siege of a capital city in modern warfare, bombarded daily by Bosnian Serb forces. Civilians were the primary targets of snipers and artillery, facing constant terror, starvation, and a complete breakdown of infrastructure. Yet, amidst this apocalyptic landscape, the people of Sarajevo displayed extraordinary resilience and courage. Instead of succumbing to despair, they found innovative ways to survive and to maintain their culture and humanity. The Sarajevo Tunnel, secretly dug by Bosnian civilians and military engineers under the airport runway, became a lifeline, supplying the city with food, weapons, and humanitarian aid, all under constant enemy fire. Every journey through the claustrophobic, dangerous tunnel was an act of courage, driven by the desperate need to sustain their besieged city. Beyond survival, the citizens of Sarajevo refused to let their spirit be broken. Artists continued to paint, musicians performed concerts in bombed-out buildings, and filmmakers documented the siege. The National and University Library, an architectural marvel and repository of Bosnian history, was deliberately shelled and burned by Serb forces, destroying millions of irreplaceable texts. Yet librarians and ordinary citizens risked their lives to save what they could, running into the burning building to retrieve precious manuscripts and books, their bravery a poignant testament to the enduring power of culture in the face of destruction. These acts, often small and personal, collectively forged a powerful narrative of defiance and human spirit that resonated across the world, demonstrating that civilian courage is not merely about surviving, but about actively choosing to live, to create, and to preserve humanity even in the face of systematic attempts to erase it. The reach of civilian courage extends beyond conflict zones, into the realms of environmental activism and scientific advocacy. Consider the groundbreaking work of Rachel Carson, an American marine biologist and conservationist, whose seminal 1962 book, Silent Spring, revolutionized the environmental movement. Carson was not a soldier or a political leader. She was a scientist and a writer, driven by a deep concern for the natural world. Her courage lay in challenging the powerful chemical industry and government agencies, exposing the devastating environmental and health impacts of widespread pesticide use, particularly DDT. Carson meticulously researched and documented her findings, presenting overwhelming evidence of ecological damage and human health risks. Her work was met with fierce opposition, vilification, and personal attacks from the chemical industry and its allies, who attempted to discredit her and dismiss her findings as alarmist and unscientific. She was accused of being an emotional woman who sought to undermine agricultural productivity and public health. Yet Carson, battling cancer during this period, stood firm. She endured relentless public scrutiny and personal attacks, responding with calm, rational arguments and an unwavering commitment to scientific truth. Her courage was not physical in the traditional sense, but intellectual and moral. She bravely spoke truth to power, risking her reputation and career to warn the world about an unseen enemy, a pervasive poison that threatened the delicate balance of ecosystems and, ultimately, human well-being. Silent Spring became a turning point, sparking public outrage, prompting government investigations, and ultimately leading to the nationwide ban of DDT in the United States and the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency. Rachel Carson's civilian courage fundamentally changed how humanity viewed its relationship with the environment, demonstrating that profound, lasting heroism can emerge from intellectual rigor and moral conviction, inspiring generations of environmental defenders. These varied stories, spanning different geographies and historical contexts, converge on a powerful, unifying truth. Heroism is not solely the domain of the uniformed warrior. It is a capacity that resides within each of us, waiting to be awakened by circumstance or by an unyielding moral call. The unsung heroes we have explored, from the villagers of Chambon to Irena Sendler, from Miep Gies to Witold Pilecki, from Varian to the comfort women activists and the resilient citizens of Sarajevo, and even to the scientific crusader Rachel Carson, all exemplify a form of courage that transcends formal training or official mandate. Their actions were driven by empathy, conviction, and a profound refusal to passively accept injustice or suffering. Their heroism often bloomed in the shadows, unnoticed by the grand narratives of history, fueled not by the promise of glory, but by the quiet, unwavering commitment to humanity. They navigated extreme personal risk, psychological torment, and the immense pressure of their environments, yet chose to act. Their stories challenge us to redefine our understanding of courage. moving beyond the sensational to recognize the profound strength found in persistent moral choice, in standing up for the vulnerable, and in preserving dignity against overwhelming odds. The legacy of these unsung heroes is not measured in medals or monuments, though some have rightly received posthumous recognition. Their true legacy lies in the lives they saved, the truths they revealed, the hope they inspired, and the indelible mark they left on the human spirit. They remind us that history is not solely shaped by kings and armies, but by the countless individual acts of defiance and compassion that, cumulatively, shift the moral landscape of the world. Their narratives serve as a vital counterpoint to the prevailing gloom of conflict, demonstrating that even amidst humanity's darkest hours, the light of individual decency and collective solidarity can stubbornly refuse to be extinguished. These quiet acts of bravery, often performed without an audience, without expectation of reward, are perhaps the purest form of heroism. They stand as enduring testaments to the extraordinary potential that lies within ordinary individuals, urging us to recognize that the capacity for profound courage resides within us all, ready to be called upon when the moral demands of our time become undeniable. The true measure of a society, perhaps, lies not just in how it remembers its celebrated heroes, but in how it uncovers and honors the untold stories of civilian courage, revealing the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of impossible choices.